Ethan.
Yeah.
We're back. We are so back.
Oh, yeah.
And another week.
Yeah.
Another exciting weekly.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to stir up some issues.
Ha, ha, ha. Get it?
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah. Stir up
Is it-
issues. It's
Yeah. Ish.
yes. Yeah.
Josh,
Yes, Alejandro.
can I say one thing?
Just one.
If you're good.
Two things.
Okay. Well, one thing.
Number one,
No.
my favorite guest
Mm-hmm.
is Ethan.
Aww.
I didn't
He
realize
puts a lot of work in what he does, and I love him.
Yes. Yes.
And
yes.
I let him rub my belly.
You do?
Number two, oh yes. Yes. Oh. Number two,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I love you and Dale.
Aww.
And
Love
I
you too,
appreciate all you
Alejandro.
do for our community.
Well, thank you. Dale's back here.
Yeah. Hi.
Gracias, my master.
Oh, thank you, Alejandro. That was very sweet.
Yes, I was.
I can't believe I'm talking to a brass armadillo.
Yeah, that's fine.
Here we go.
Weirder things are happening.
True. Yes, they.
Today.
What? So true.
Alright, let's
Not gonna argue.
Let's get rolling.
Welcome to the State of the Ozarks podcast. This is Josh Heston, editor-in-chief.
And this is Ethan Grubaugh.
And we're talking about our Ozarks.
Your community.
And this episode I've been thinking about has been brought to you by
Artist Christine Reitzel, Beauty from Light.
Josh Huxtable, State of the Ozarks patron.
Stafford's Barbershop and Shave Company, the place for men in downtown Branson.
Shepherd the Musical, rediscovering America's story.
Blue Rock Print Company, upgrade your look.
And the Taney County Health Department, creating opportunities for healthy lives in our community.
And of course, we just last week had Stafford in.
Yes,
As a guest.
we did.
It was.
That was rocking.
That was a lot of fun. You know, I sat in here and just listened most of the time,
Yeah.
and it was just a lot. You know, it stirred up a lot of
feelings.
in everyone who was in the room, including our producer who never says anything.
I would say it stirred up all the feels, but Noah Bray would hit me. He doesn't
Say it anyway. Who cares?
Oh my gosh! Fair enough. So, new issue.
Yes.
And speaking of stirring things up, what'd you think of this issue?
You know, I noticed in the editorial it talks a lot about the sacred and the profane.
Yes.
And you see that a lot of times, especially in the church culture.
Good point.
I think you see, you know, this is okay, this is not. You know?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so that's what that kind of made me think.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's, you know, a group of people who are making that decision. Okay, this is okay, this is not.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's what.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I actually pulled the title, and I love, for whatever reason, I love the words, the phrase sacred and profane. I think it's incredibly thought provoking, and the first time I actually ever heard it was on the original 1940s version of Fantasia, which is for the record like one of my favorite things to watch at Christmas time. I don't know why Christmas time, but it is. I've got it on DVD.
Yeah, things, you know, if that's what you remember, like that's.
Well, the really weird part is this was kind of like a something that developed when I was in my 20s. When I never saw Fantasia Foundation. I never saw Fantasia in the theater because I don't think it was popular enough for them to like re-release it in the theater,
Right.
like Jungle Book or you know, Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty. But I remember when, not long after we got our first VCR and could actually buy VHS tapes, and there was Fantasia, and I'd seen The Sorcerer's Apprentice as a short in front of Snow White in the early 80s. And this was about 1990, and Fantasia came out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, so I begged my mom to buy it for me. Got it home at Christmas time, and put the thing in, And it was like, and granted, so I was like 12. And I'm like, seriously, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm sitting there going, I'm waiting for the plot. Some point? Plot? Hello? Plot? Come in?
The biggest thing I remember from Fantasia is the dancing hippos and the tutus.
Yes, they are quite glorious. But
And they had Bacchus on there too, didn't they?
yes,
Yeah.
they did.
Or Dionysus. Or
Yeah.
Same guy.
It was, and the animation's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So I remember I watched it like once as a 12-year-old, and actually I was so bored I kept changing over to Jeopardy. Serious? I'm serious. I didn't even watch Jeopardy, and I'm like,
Yeah, he must be really bored to think that Jeopardy's interesting.
I know. I never watched Jeopardy, and I'm like, okay, I'll go over here. Well, then in my 20s, and I became a graphic designer, and fell in love with design and art and color and all that kind of stuff. And then I pulled the VHS tape out and rewatched it at Christmas time by myself, and it just like really resonated, and I fell in love with it. But at the very end, we have Night on Bald Mountain, and then we have Ave Maria, and the introduction, the formal composer introduction to it, talks about that these two pieces are bookended as the sacred and the profane. And I really just became fascinated with that duality.
Right. And, you know, a lot of times when I hear the you know, sacred and profane thing, is a lot of times are referred to like music.
Yes.
It's
a good point, yes.
You know, based on how many times they mention Jesus and in what context.
Sacred.
You know, yeah. Or, you know, even people, it could be taken. Like, take, Chris Pratt, for example.
Yes.
Outspoken Christian. So there's some people that, like, use that as validation for their faith, but then there's other people who look at everything else he does in his personal life.
Yeah.
And, you know, but at the same time, you look at yourself if you're going to do that.
Yeah. Like, my favorite church music is Mumford and Sons.
And they have some interesting worship lyrics.
To
say the least.
Little Lion Man, all the way around. Love that song.
I was thinking of the Broken Crowns.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Yeah.
But they also, they covered Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing.
Yeah, where did you find that? Cause
it's on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Because
Yeah.
I just tried looking on iTunes and I couldn't find it.
No, it was something that they just did at a concert.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so it's on iTunes,
Gotcha.
which is one of my favorite hymns, and it's been around for centuries.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what century Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. It's number 13 in the Baptist hymnal.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I keep kicking you. I'm sorry.
And
Did it again. And again. I'm sorry.
And while we're on the theme, Mumford and Sons also covers one of my favorite songs from the Disney movie Robin Hood. Every town has its ups and downs. Roger Miller. It's the Roger Miller song from the Robin Hood film.
Oh, okay. The only one that I can remember is the whistling intro.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I used to, because before we had, we're going down memory lane.
Oh, yeah.
Before we had a VCR. Before we had a VCR, we had a record player. and the record player for our record collection, we had these big, I think they're up in the closet. These big gulp. We had these big records, the big ones, and it was Disney films on record. And so it came with a book, and it came with original artwork, and the whole bit, and it came with the sound portions of the soundtrack from the film, which doesn't sound like much, but when it's early 80s and this is the closest you're going to get to reliving your film, it's like a big deal. So we had those records. We had Rescuers. We had Robin Hood. I think we had Jungle Book. The movies that we really loved.
Yeah.
And listening to them, for me as a little kid, listening to them was an event that was a very special event. Usually, in the summertime, my sister and I, we'd go downstairs and we would put on a record and listen to the movie. And typically when we listened to Robin Hood, I would get a strawberry popsicle. So I equate Robin Hood with strawberry popsicles. Anyway, it has nothing to do with the sacred and the profane.
Yeah. But there was another thing that we were gonna address
Yes.
before we brought up Dale or Dad.
Yes. Yes. We are going to bring out your dad.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we are. It's late. We're recording this rather late. But it's fun. And yeah, and we're going to get into it with him as well.
Yeah.
Because he wrote the article.
Right. But this is probably something we need to go ahead and get out of the way right now.
Absolutely. Disclaimers ahead.
Talking about
we're going to get onto our White River raft and paddle our way through our disclaimers.
Mm-hmm. So one of the feature articles.
Yes.
Is actually a reprint.
Yes, actually, yes, it is.
It's entitled Cottonmouth Water Moccasin.
Yep.
That was a lot to try and
say.
Anyway.
Water-headed copper moccasin.
Yeah. One head, one horn, fine. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's about snakes.
It's about snakes. Yes. To quote Indiana Jones.
And it is
why did it have to be snakes?
And it is a personal experience.
Yes.
Retold.
About cottonmouths.
About cottonmouths. Mm-hmm. And there have been people who have taken issue with.
Yes, one person. One person who took issue with it loudly and took issue quite vociferously on Facebook, giving State of the Ozarks one of its 2 bad reviews.
Yes.
Yeah, terrible misinformation and folklore in regards to snakes and cottonmouths. The information is misleading and causes more irrational fear and harm. That was the review.
Yeah. Okay, so...
The other one was Stop with the Satanic Goats.
Which that's a story for another time. Anyway,
we'll deal with that at Krampusnacht.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So once again, it's an article, personal story.
Yes.
They're freaking snakes, people. Come on. All right. I want to get that out of the way.
There's a lot of people who love snakes.
I don't like spiders.
I know. Yeah, I never have published those photos of the tarantula I took.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
Yes.
You don't have to. All right.
It's all good.
Okay, if you guys want to get mad at me for not liking snakes, that's fine. Not snakes. Spiders. That's cool. I don't care. Don't leave a review. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. You might want to edit that out. I can get us in trouble.
Oh my gosh. Something that I think that is really important, and I would encourage people to do this, is read deeply into what you're doing before you write your reviews. I've been wanting to, because of course you can't take reviews off on Facebook, which is totally fine. I honestly love the one that says Stop with the Satanic Goats. It's my favorite review of all time.
Well, what's best is that it's just like, there's no context.
No, I know. Hi, State of the Ozarks is all about satanic goats all the time. For people, for those of you at home who are wondering, it's a reference to a photo that I posted of myself with my Krampusnacht mask on, which is actually right over there. So if our producer would be kind enough to hand me the Krampus,
I'll grab it.
Ethan,
I'll grab it.
Yeah, you can grab him by his tongue.
I'm gonna put it on. I don't care. Might not put it on now.
It's a.
Can the producer just say that as I walk through the park in our Hollister community, I wonder as I walk, is this promoting Satanistic goats?
I suspect not. For individuals who are.
My microphone's gone.
Yeah, yes it is.
The Satanist microphone is gone, and
So-
his tongue is.
We'll
4.5 inches from his face.
We are for people who are just
I
listening.
I will put the microphone back in his face.
Ethan is wearing my Krampusnacht mask.
Yeah.
Krampus is European folklore. Now I will be the first to admit it is. If a photo of that shows up on my Facebook feed, first thing in the morning,
We all have nightmares.
Without preparation, I could take some immediate issue, jump to some conclusions that maybe would be a little bit different. Yeah, we'll post photos on State of the Ozarks. But again, it's about understanding the nuance and it's about understanding the balance. I'm having a
really freaking stuffy.
I know. I wore it for like an hour.
Or demonic.
Oh yeah. Okay.
because
Turn this thing off.
because stuffy and demonic are synonymous. So speaking of stuffy,
You can say it's a little hot.
It is.
Or hellish.
Okay.
This turned into a train wreck. All right. So anyway. Snakes.
So that was Krampusnacht, but I am running with the point on this. Is that it's very easy to jump to conclusions if you don't actually pay attention to what you're talking about. Something, people can look at the Krampus mask and jump to all sorts of conclusions without knowing the story. When you know the story, there's valid reasons behind it. Mm-hmm. We're going to get your dad in here to specifically talk about this, give him a voice on this. Now, I personally find snakes incredibly fascinating. I'm a bit scared of them, but I do find them fascinating, and I respect them in their environment. I mean, this is like total honest disclaimer here. I respect them in their environment, and I understand that they're a vital and incredibly interesting part of our ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And that's what they are. But to paint all animals with some sort of a fluffy brush is not honestly doing them the justice of what they are. There are a variety of animals in the wild that can be dangerous, and one of the things that we're dealing with. So on State of the Ozarks, what I did as editor-in-chief is that I published 2 articles. I published an article which we'll revisit later, or we'll visit later, not tonight, written by Ben Dalton, who is a herpetologist. Your sister Erin knows him.
Yeah.
You know him, yeah. Absolutely love snakes. I was out at met him and one other herpetologist one afternoon, hot summer afternoon, out at Henning. And the entire reason for being out there was flipping over rocks to see what sort of venomous creatures were potentially underneath them. I mean, that was the afternoon. I was standing there with my camera like, okay, I'll be a little bit back here. But I thought it was fascinating. I went out. I totally respect that. And his article, which is also published on State of the Ozarks, is talking about these animals as, very... It's a very different story than what your dad has shared. Yeah. Ben's experience is very honest. Your dad's experience is very honest. They're talking about the same animal. This is what I think is so powerful. It's one of the reasons I want to talk about it on the podcast, and it's something that I really love about the magazine format, is that there are nuances. Mm-hmm. There are nuances in nature. There are nuances in humanity. There are nuances in life. There is not one-size-fits-all answers.
Right.
And that's one of the great things about podcast is we can, play with that. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, with the sacred and profane theme, we have the second article, which is also your dad.
Yeah.
Singing.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. Recorded that a couple of weeks ago. And, of course, it's now on YouTube. So that's what we got. What was the recipe? I don't even remember what I did.
Let me pull it back up.
Got so obsessed over Krampus and snakes and...
Corn relish salad.
Corn relish salad is I think it's good. It's an old Appalachian recipe.
I've never had it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, high in starch. That's good stuff. Let's get your dad in here.
024925. 024925. Switch.
Ooh. Yeah, let's go. There we go.
You got it. Good morning. I need to get some water.
Okay. So, we're back in the behind the scenes.
Hi there.
Hello. And then we're going to kick this thing off.
Okay.
If you're ready, Mr. In Charge.
I believe he's recording.
Okay. Dale, it's good to have you in the studio.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Good to have you back. It's been a little while.
It has been.
And you're pretty much the feature of this entire issue.
It is all about me. It really is. As it should be.
No, the universe is back in its rightful place.
That's right.
And here you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sacred and Profane.
Yes.
You had a chance, I think, to read the editorial.
Mm-hmm.
And what'd you think? I'm just curious.
It was good. It was very good. You know, there is such a light and dark, you know.
And sometimes they cross over.
Sometimes
in real life.
over. You know, it's called morning and evening.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Yeah. Twilight is a special time.
Yes, it is.
It really is. And I think, of course, I wanted to express those specific elements. Now, this is kind of going off. Well, yeah. Let's just express it in those specific elements of. We've got your Cottonmouth article. Mm-hmm. Which was also augmented. I don't know if you had a chance to. If you scroll down, there's also the quote from Vance Randolph.
From Vance Randolph, I saw that.
Yeah, which is.
Thank you, Vance.
Was published in 1947, and then the other article is you singing "Old Rugged Cross," and I really wanted to explore and mess with those themes, but of course we've already talked about the fact that we got an awful review.
Yes,
one awful review.
That nobody liked. Nobody said anything about it.
Yeah,
it was there.
Yeah,
you know.
Terrible misinformation. And what I really, because again, podcasts allow for that long format discussion and the nuances of situations. So tell me about this story.
Well, you know, I grew up in the Ozark River country, you know, and I have fished on and off Table Rock Lake, Bull Shoals Lake, you know, all my life.
Yes.
And I've done a lot of night fishing.
Right.
You know, work during the day, work in the fields, you know, about the only time you had to fish was at night, you know. And in the summer times when you'd go out, especially to the rivers, you know, as you approached the water, you could hear, you know, splash, 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 you know. And it was the snakes, the cottonmouths that were coming out of the trees, you know, falling into the...
Those weren't frogs.
No, those weren't frogs. And there have been times I've been on the river where, and even in the daytime, where they get the boat with us, you know.
And you're talking about cottonmouths.
I'm talking about cottonmouth, not just water snakes. I'm talking about cottonmouth, you know. And one stretch of the river that we were on when I was young, you know, there were so many cottonmouths there that the northern water snakes that you would normally see just really weren't much in abundance because that was the cottonmouth's favorite food.
Yes.
You know, and they'd be after
that northern water snake. I'm drunk, so we'll cut that part.
And so, you know, and I wrote that out of my own experience, you know, as to you know what I experienced with the cottonmouths, and there's a reference in the story about copperheads as well and rattlesnakes. You know, one thing I learned was to have a respect for them.
Right.
You know, give them their berth. You know, just, you know, steer clear as you can. But there have been times when I've been night fishing out here on Table Rock Lake, and I get back up in the smaller brushy coves, you know, in the summertime, and you know, they'd come out, especially if you got near a mama snake, you know, who had little ones, because she's very protective, she's very territorial, you know, and man, you know, they are aggressive. If they think you're coming after their brood, they're going to come after you. Yeah. You know, and I've had to fight them out of this, you know, out of the boat, you know, and get out of there as quickly as we can, because there was one night it was so eerie, and I if I think about it too much, I have bad dreams. But there was one night where my brother-in-law and I were fishing in the small cove not far from Kimberling City, and we had one trying to get in the boat with us, you know. So we started shining, you know, the light around so we could see if there was any more and things like that. And as you sight, you could see the little red eyes all over the water, and you know the little ones were coming too, you know. And so we cranked and got out of there rather quickly. And to this day, during the summertime, I won't fish
the small coves.
The dog days.
Yeah, especially the dog days. Man, there was another time when I had a boat and a boat dock, and it was back in a small cove, and we had a mama cottonmouth who decided to make our boat her home, and so I finally had somebody to come get it. I didn't want it anymore.
You didn't want the.
I didn't want it because I didn't want the snake that was in it. And I do have a healthy respect of snakes. I am afraid of snakes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie about that. But I mean, my fear of snakes comes from having to deal with them. I mean,
Yes.
on the farm we had to deal with the rattlesnakes. We had to deal with the copperheads. And they would surprise you from all kinds of places. And I just have a real healthy respect for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't have snakes around, I'm really happy.
But that's not to say, and I think so. There are a number of people who, for a variety of reasons, love snakes.
Mm-hmm.
Who would say that across the board snakes are not aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
and you've had personal experience
Oh yeah,
to say otherwise.
Yeah.
Specifically with venomous.
venomous.
And,
The cottonmouth and the copperhead.
yes.
Um,
And typically during the dog days of summer,
Mhm.
which we're getting ready to come into.
That's right.
So we're talking about, and there's two specific things. We're talking about potentially at a time where they molt and they
Mm-hmm.
could lose their eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also talking about a time frame in which they have babies to protect.
Yes, they have babies to protect. And it's, at some point, even during the mating season, the male and female copperheads, they kind of hunt in pairs.
Mhm.
And I'm saying that they hunt, humans.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that at all. But if you happen upon them, at night, and that they're nocturnal,
Mhm.
and if you happen upon them at night out there, if you see one, there's another one close by.
Right. And
You know.
bull snakes will do the same thing.
Yes. And one night, my wife and I, we hadn't been married very long. We were coming back to our apartment, and it was in the late summer, nighttime. She was getting ready to walk up onto the deck of our A-frame house, and I happened to see on the deck, a copperhead
Mhm.
snake, a full adult-sized copperhead snake, and so I said, "Don't move,"
Mhm.
and then I said, "But you watch that one."
Mhm.
And she said, "What do you mean by watch that one?" I said, "Trust me, there's another one here somewhere."
Yeah.
And sure enough, I turned around and was fanning the yard, the grass out there, and there he was, and he was slipping up, and they kind of do that. If they sense danger, they're going to protect each other,
Yeah.
and
Which
when
is
they saw,
very intelligent.
Yeah, they saw us as a threat,
Mhm.
And there will be people who are going to argue about that, but you can argue your theory all you want. I know what I've experienced,
Yeah.
and I'm going to stick to my experience.
Yeah. And I think to balance this out, number one, just killing whatever snake you possibly can find
Mhm.
is not necessarily
No.
the answer.
Mhm.
That's not what
No.
we're talking about here. And out at Mincy, I was out at Mincy last
Mhm.
week, saw two snakes out
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
They're out there, they ain't hurting me.
No.
They're
Yeah.
they're a long way from the house.
Yeah.
But I think to understand that these are animals who are potentially dangerous
Mhm.
in certain circumstances, and
Mhm.
to say that they are not intelligent, that they're not willing to defend themselves, and they're not willing to think or to defend
Mhm.
their offspring. I mean, I've run across cows and hogs that do the same thing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you get a mama sow
Mhm.
with babies, and she's mad.
And she's gonna get
You do
aggressive.
not want to get in the pen with her.
Yeah.
It would be a really bad mistake.
Yeah.
And I have,
Mhm.
absolutely nothing against
Yeah.
pigs.
Yeah.
But,
I like pigs.
Yeah.
They make great ham,
bacon.
bacon, sausage, pork chops.
But-
Anyway.
But I think it's something that is incredibly. I think that there's a cultural divide here.
Mhm.
Those of us who've grown up on farms, pretty much accept some of these realities.
Yeah.
And along with that comes an interesting level of respect for animals. The idea that these animals are thinking beings. That most of the time, they're absolutely, humans are the dominant being, but occasionally that will flip.
Yeah. And it's when either human invades their territory, or the human comes across them while they're, transient, traveling, whatever,
Yes.
And it's always that encounter. Now, I don't go out killing snake just for the joy of killing snakes, because I don't like taking life, I can't, I used to be a hunter, I can't hardly do it anymore. So I don't do that. And I wouldn't, suggest to anyone that you go out, just kill all the snakes you can, no. But just like the snake, if I startle it, and I have been bit, I got bit by a copperhead it's been 40, almost 40 years ago now.
That was out of Shepherd, wasn't it?
It was out somewhere, west of here. And I got bit on the leg. I was weed eating in a lot of tall grass, and I startled, I came upon this and he hit me, it's because I invaded his territory.
Yeah, with a weed eater.
Yeah, with a weed eater. And, the same thing, if they startle me, I'm going to react the same way. If there's something I've got in my hand, I'm probably going to do my best to react, especially if it is a venomous snake.
Yeah, specifically. Now, and coming off of this, of course, we've got an article. We'll revisit this as well, but we've got an article about king snakes.
Yes.
King snakes prey on copperheads. If you have a king snake around your house, the chances of you having a copperhead is like really low.
Yeah. Hogs are good at that too. We don't have many people with hogs anymore. Hogs love copperheads.
Yeah, and I think the black rat snake.
Yep.
Preys on copperheads as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of the docile snakes that are very good. If I hate to even say this, but around our church.
Yeah, around Smyrna.
We had the black rat snakes, and we had the juvenile rat snakes that would even get inside. We didn't kill them.
Yeah, especially Miss Catherine. Miss Catherine would be packing them around.
Yeah, we'd pick them up and make sure they go outside. But they kept, they had a job to do there.
Yeah.
And they kept the rodent population down and took care of those kind of things. I've held black snakes. I've touched black snakes. I've held king snakes.
This sounds crazy, but those adult black rat snakes are actually kind of cute.
Yeah.
In a weird sort of way.
Their
eyes. They are big, but their eyes are different.
They're more of a
round,
black,
more like lizards or something. It just seems different.
Yeah. But anyway, so I am not a snake hater.
Yeah.
I have a healthy respect for them.
As everyone should, especially.
I am afraid of them.
Yeah, especially as we're going into summer.
Yeah.
And of course we've got pygmy rattlers.
Oh yeah.
Found a few of those around.
And the diamondback.
Yeah, we've got rattlesnakes
here.
We've got
So and when people go hiking and things, they need to be respectful of where they're hiking and not go off into weird places. But even on the trails,
wear
keep your eyes open. Wear your boots. Keep your eyes open.
Yeah. And keep a walking stick just to
move.
And move that. What I like to do, especially, I make a point of not abruptly stepping over into leaf litter. Like if you've got a log in front of you, don't just stomp over it. And the one areas that make me nervous is when there's a lot of leaf litter. That really, because you can't see what you're stepping on, and they could very easily be in the leaf litter and not necessarily know that you're going to step on them. I mean, I certainly can't blame them for reacting if you did, but yikes, that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, was a few years ago. I was hiking with a friend, and he did exactly that. He stepped into a pile of leaf litter. Fortunately, he didn't get bit. Because the snake was as terrified as he was, and it ran just as hard one way as he did the other. But it was one of those things. He stepped where he should not have stepped.
Yeah.
and
a
Discourage.
huge part of this is just awareness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Of course, the photos of the Cottonmouth is from War Eagle.
Yep, from War Eagle. The photographer even said, he was just a little bit grumpy.
Yeah, just a little grumpy. It's it's a full grown Cottonmouth in the mill wheel well of War Eagle Mill following a flood. So it's in the flood, the snakes have been displaced, and that Cottonmouth is ingesting a Nerodia cypodon, a big water snake, and the photos just are. The photos are horrifying, but I love them. Oh my gosh, I love them because they so capture, and they capture the rawness. I think the intelligence and the rawness of nature at its most brutal. And so I'm thrilled. Of course, huge thanks to Tammy Evans for sharing those. She shared those years ago, and because I wasn't there at the time, and I guarantee you, if I had been there, I would have not have crawled into the mill wheel well with those animals. No.
But the good part about it was, that Cottonmouth had that other snake, pretty much in its mouth.
Yeah, that Cottonmouth wasn't biting anything.
He wasn't going to bite anything. Wasn't going to bite her, but it.
Wow.
She was taking chances I wouldn't have taken. So.
Yeah. Anyway. But it's amazing photography.
Yeah.
And we're really grateful to have that. And there is a mystique about snakes. And I think
it goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 3 in the Garden of Eden.
Yes, it does.
So.
Yes, it does. And that's where we were really. Of course, that's where I was kind of headed with that.
Thank you.
with the second part, we've got the profane and then the sacred. And a couple of weeks ago, we got you and Danette to play piano and you to sing "Old Rugged Cross." Tell me about that song.
Well, the "Old Rugged Cross" is probably one of the first hymns that I ever learned to sing. I remember. Doing it for the very first time. I was probably, I don't know, maybe 8, 10 years old, someone there at church, on an Easter Sunday morning, and as a kid I had a really high-pitched voice. My voice is not real deep now, but I mean, as a child it was really a very high-pitched voice. And I loved to sing. I probably wasn't very good. I had an aunt who was sitting in the church that day, and she kind of, described it as, calling hogs on pitch, but that kind of thing. But just the story of what God has done for mankind through the cross.
Yeah.
And what it means. I've sung it, at church over and over. On my album, Hymns from the Hollow, it was one of the signature songs on that album. And the engineer that did it set it up to where at the beginning of the song there's the sound of a hammer hitting nail, and it became such. When you heard the song being played on the radio or wherever, you knew what was coming because in fact, I had someone back then ask if they could re-record it, for a particular service, and of course I gave them that permission, but it's a song that, for a long time, that the only place you ever heard it's kind of like, in the garden. The only time you ever heard it was at a funeral, and I don't like just have those at the funeral. It is a very meaningful song.
It is.
Yeah.
It really, really is. And with that, and I don't want to dig too deep into this, but in the themes of sacred and profane, and this is something we dealt with last week, sometimes our heroes aren't heroes. Sometimes our villains aren't nearly as bad as we think they are. Life is messy. And of course, the writer of the song.
Which was George Bernard.
Yep. George was in. When did he write the song?
In 1913.
1913. Same year that my grandmother was born. For a period of time, George Bernard lived in Lucas, Iowa, which is home country for me. And I was reading a history book about the area. Mentioned him in the 1920s. There was a resurgence of the KKK, and I found out that George Bernard gave the Klan money. And and to be fair, when I first read that, my heart sank. It really did, because this is one of the great hymns, and the idea that a hymn writer, a voice of 20th century Christianity could do something this bad, or could be this mistaken, that's very troubling. And then, having to think that through, going, but does that diminish the work? And I think not. I think, if we begin to diminish the work of others because they're imperfect people or they make mistakes, we diminish the work of everyone.
Yeah.
And that the danger of guilt by association is terrifying.
And the thing that happens there is, number one, we don't know the circumstances under which, Mr. Bernard gave, the money. We don't know, what happened. Did he know he was doing it? I don't know. We don't know the circumstance. Just to say, ooh, he did it, and that makes it horrible. We can't make that kind of judgment call.
No,
we really can't.
It's above our pay grade.
Yeah, but this is one of the most loved.
So...
I mean, you ask people anywhere,
yes.
To list your 3 favorite hymns.
Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace, The Old Rugged Cross, and
trying to think what number 3 is. I'm
number 35. It's How Great Thou Art.
How great! Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the 3 that people are going to throw at you.
Yeah.
I know at Silver Dollar City, when was at the church there. We knew every Sunday we were going to sing those 3 songs, so we got it done first. We were going to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you up to sharing a little bit of the song?
I'll warble out a little bit. It is late, but I'm going to try it. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross, where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown.
Awesome job, Dale.
Yeah, thank you.
Mighty good having you. You're welcome. Mighty good having you in here.
Thank you. It was good being here.
Absolutely. We'll have you back.
All right. Good.
We'll switch you guys out.
Okay. I'm going. I'll just sit down.
You have anything you want to share?
I'll probably just tell a story about the kayak.
Dale, you beast, you SOB.
Oh my gosh. Here we go.
Wait,
You ready?
03. No, that song threw me off. Hold on.
Okay.
That was good.
You ready?
Don't, Dale, just pulling out that annoying, anyways. Yeah, we're ready.
Ethan, how are you, man?
I'm doing great.
Good to have you back here.
Yeah.
Your dad's awesome.
Yeah. No.
Oh, So you got some stories too, don't you? We're
Yeah.
gonna wrap this puppy up, but
Yeah.
you got some stories.
I mean, I was listening to you guys talking about, respecting, having a respect for snakes.
Yes.
And it reminded me of a story of when I was, I think, a year out of high school, and me and 4 of my friends went on a float trip down on the Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're all like 18, 19, something like that.
Yeah.
And there's 4 of us, like 2 per canoe, and then 1 guy in a kayak. Because no one wanted to be in the same boat as him. But anyway, so as we're paddling down the river, we notice a snake start swimming up.
Yeah.
And which one is it that if they're on top of the water?
Copper or cottonmouth, venomous.
Okay,
yeah.
so it was one of those. And he comes swimming up, and so we just try to swim, paddle away, as long as you don't follow us, we're not going to mess with him.
Right.
Except for the guy in the kayak.
Oh my.
Who decides he's going to paddle up to it and try to whack it with his oar.
Bad idea.
Yeah, very. Instead, the snake got in the boat with him.
Oh my.
And this was not a very fast man.
Yeah.
But you'd have thought Usain Bolt was in that boat. He just shot out of there. Oh my gosh. And, we're laughing at him. Snake took the boat.
Oh my.
Oh, yeah, it was. And, just, you should really not try to mess with them.
No. Respect nature. It could react.
Yeah.
Sometimes violently and intelligently.
Yeah. So, once again, healthy respect of snakes.
Yes.
I'm not saying to go up and hit it with a kayak. Because in my experience, it has not ended well.
No, that's fair enough.
Luckily, he did not get bit.
Yes,
Of
absolutely.
course, 20 minutes or an hour later, he tried killing himself again in a different format.
Speaking of male initiation rites from last week.
That one was actually probably funnier, but we're not going to get into that story because it's late and I am tired. And
Absolutely.
So is Alejandro and Jared.
Oh my gosh. So, to learn more.
Oh, sorry. Can we restart that again?
No, that's alright. So, to learn more.
Visit us on stateoftheozarks.net.
Sign up for the State of the Ozarks weekly email.
Like State of the Ozarks on Facebook.
Follow at Soto Media on Twitter.
Subscribe to Soto Media on YouTube.
Follow us on Instagram at State of the Ozarks.
And subscribe to this Been Thinking About podcast on iTunes.
Thank you for listening to Been Thinking About, the State of the Ozarks podcast with Josh.
And Ethan.
And this is our Ozarks.
Your community.
I'm so tired. Oh!